On this channel, I've shown you guys what the absolute bottom 0% lobby in Warzone looks like, and I did it because it was an interesting insight into the world of people who just play from time to time. Now, I'm going to give you an insight into the world of people who play this game religiously, because this is what a top 1% lobby in Warzone looks like, and the introduction of Warzone Ranked, I'm telling you, has been a sight to behold. Much like most video games, or pretty much any game that has a competitive edge to it, what plays out in casual versus what plays out in ranked tend to be two vastly separate experiences. People in casual tend to mess around with a few more things and play with things that are less restricted, like sniper rifles. People in ranked min-max absolutely everything. And in this video today, I'm going to be telling you guys about all of the big shifts that you're going to see in these utterly unreal lobbies. If you find these sorts of deep dives interesting, please drop a like on this and consider becoming a sub. It does support the channel and we're on the road to 200k. The first major difference you're going to notice with ranked is the entire tempo of this plays at an entirely different speed. Almost all of the top teams and players are immediately landing on a buy station and picking up 2 weapons for $500 each as a result of an existing bug. And as I'll mention later on in this video, min-maxing everything, even if it's broken, is just the reality of ranked play. So landing on guns almost instantaneously, hitting out a contract, and then starting to rotate onto other teams has become a huge part of this game. And if you fall behind in tempo because you didn't get your weapons fast enough, you didn't get your loadout quickly enough, or you didn't start popping UAVs to start taking on other teams, you will find yourself very far down in the pack. And within a matter of moments, you can go from being in a really good spot to a really bad spot, and teams are going to cycle on top of you. Regains in this situation and trying to get people back into the game itself are going to put you in a tricky spot because most intelligent teams will also play around buy stations, and staying ahead of the tempo is a really big thing. Having all 3 of you alive and playing deep into the circles to get that really critically important late game SR for placement becomes so massive in this. So tempo is stage 1. If you fall behind in tempo, you're not getting any gains. If you get ahead of the tempo, you're going to do really, really well. The next big difference you'll notice in these top 1% lobbies is how larger contextual awareness starts coming into the fray. Thinking about things like if you're on a UAV consistently, thinking about things like if you see a 3-man stack and are they heading in your direction, or even if you're on a regain, thinking about the activity in the area. Have you seen tracers? Have you seen players? Has a contract recently been popped in that location? Every little hint and detail that you can pick up on that might allude to the presence of players can be a hugely important thing. The vast majority of people have started running Ghost and Suppressors almost instantly because it became very obvious early on that appearing on the radar as a red dot was getting people third-partied even faster. Because even when you're playing ranked play perfectly, you're getting the right positions, all 3 of you are venturing in as a stack into different gunfights, and you're just generally playing quite well, you will still find things in this competitive format that are going to put you down. Third parties, people using utilities, people using streaks, all of that can very much get on top of you very quickly. And as a result of that, you start accounting for things that you wouldn't even account for, like putting a protection system down in the second floor, min-maxing your utilities so that you can get the most out of a building position. Players have very quickly clocked on that in this game, larger context is everything. Are there people on your VSAT? Are there people not on your VSAT? Can you make a good rotation? Is it worth you playing the edge of the zone because the circle's looking horrendous, or taking up a power position and risking being pushed? There is so many little micro decisions that go into the overall context of what's going on that the top teams in the world and the guys who are going to hit T250, Iridescent and beyond are having these conversations in real time. They're talking about, hey, that bounty contract just got taken a few meters ahead of us, so there's definitely someone there. Or they're doing regains on the basis of visual information that they've seen. You're going to see a lot of this stuff play out in really fast windows in ways that you probably won't see in any kind of pubs game. People in pubs games, generally speaking, are just moving around and looking for some sort of fight here and there. But in a full-blown ranked game, you are seeing full decision-making coming out with people moving building to building, people moving cover to cover, people being aware of contracts, people being aware of UAVs, streaks, and everything that could affect the overall outcome of getting from A to B. It all comes into the game. The next thing is meta min-maxing. This is definitely something that you're seeing a lot of in ranked play very early on, and it definitely exposes some of the weaknesses that we've seen in Warzone in terms of balancing. Throughout the first couple of days, we are seeing a meta of 100 round XM4s, which, in my opinion, all need to be banned. Anything that gives ARs a magazine capacity of over 60 rounds just means that you've got 3 players with 300 bullets without having to reload who could shoot players through buildings because they're all made out of paper mache. I genuinely think having more than extended mag 2, anything above a 60 round magazine for an AR, is a massively, massively unbalanced thing, and hopefully we see that change soon. But that's just the basis of the weapons. The biggest meta min-maxing you're seeing is actually the extra layer on top of that. The vast majority of teams are running a battle-ready loadout so that they can use fire sales, or that they can buy loadouts themselves to get a VSAT on any given occasion. And most teams who are reaching into top 250 in Crimson and Iridescent are popping possibly 2 to 3 VSATs a game, not only to inform them of free kills and 3v2s and 3v1s that they can capitalize on, but also to give them the big advance of information when making late game rotations. The current meta of landing on a buy station and picking up an 8 attachment weapon for $500, the current meta of getting VSATs off of battle ready classes, and also the current meta of utilizing different utilities is what's separating people out between the ranks. Good teams and top teams are very quickly getting on board with the idea of calling in VSATs and regaining ammunition and plates as much as humanly possible so that they're always in a prime position to take a fight. And many of them are just exploiting numbers advantages. It makes sense to take on a 3v2 because as long as all of you are there to trade out the kills, there's a good chance that nobody will get fooled in that equation. Whereas a 3v3 from position to position only makes sense if you manage to get one of the entry picks or take out an opponent very early on. The last part of this equation with meta min-maxing for me, and something we've definitely not seen a huge amount of in public games, is the use of different utilities. It is starting to become quite apparent that things like shock sticks, blast traps, spring mines, even things like the gas grenades that are available to you are starting to take more of a place in the game. I have regularly been using these shock sticks and trap mines just because it stops a team advancing a push if we have 1 or 2 players downed, and it has been working incredibly successfully. And I've generally been noticing more teams, especially in the top brackets, starting to shy away from having a team composition where everybody's running stim, smokes, and nades, and some people are starting to think about setup utility. Because in a 3v3 gunfight, if a team decides to push your building, the difference between you guys getting a full wipe and maybe losing that fight can be as much as a single piece of damage. So things like spring mines, blast traps, and shock sticks have started to have a bit more of an abundant effect on the game, and something that I personally feel not only acts as an early warning system to let you know somebody might be nearby and is probably trying to push you, but also acts as a full-blown offensive counter in the game. So you're seeing a lot of that min-maxing coming in very quickly. The next big thing that's starting to evolve in the top 1% of lobbies, which obviously is something that you would just assume would be the case anyway, is just pure team play dynamics. You have 3 people communicating at a highly intricate level. It's very rarely people squad filling. I would assume pretty much everybody playing from pretty much Diamond onwards, or even Platinum onwards, is a full-blown 3-stack that has match made as a group, which means you're going to have that heightened communication level, you're not going to have any disconnects with different people, and also quite possibly people they are familiar with. Most squads in the top 250 and most squads breaching into Iridescent are playing with the same people quite frequently and getting a feel for their playstyles and getting a feel for how that plans out. And that can make or break a team. You know, the difference between you being 1 second behind or 1 second ahead on a gunfight might just be how well you know the person you're playing with. And that means that the game has a larger level of depth to it too. It means you're going to have people who are communicating every push, communicating every fight, trading out kills with each other and getting their teammates ready for said trades, as opposed to some of the stuff you see in public games. Without a doubt, pretty much every team I've ran into has been well organized and well communicated, and even if they lose a fight, they do it in a very challenging fashion. And you're seeing this pretty early on, and I'm really glad we're seeing it in ranked play and seeing better cohesiveness. In the previous iterations of ranked, it was honestly fairly easy to get into Crimson and Iridescent without a huge amount of work, and SR gains were pretty much dead easy. In this iteration of ranked, I think we're seeing a much more punishing structure that is actually making team play so much more important. And I'm actually glad that is the case. I've often felt like ranked in the past has simply been a case of who plays more. And whilst there is still an element of people grinding in the hours, it definitely does feel as though teams who work well together and make those big SR gains are ultimately more important than the amount of hours that they put in. The final biggest thing that I'm noticing in these top 1% lobbies is the importance of the first down. Now, we have played some very, very talented team, World Series players, LAN players, players who I'm very familiar with in the scene. And the importance of that first pick cannot be overstated enough. The second your team ends up going from a 3v3 to a 2v3, that team is going to play the numbers advantage every single time because there are very few things that will counter or provide the sufficient amount of damage to stop that push from occurring. So once you start breaching into these top lobbies, the idea of getting picked first because you took too long peeking something, or you get team shot by teams who are doing a 3-2-1 countdown and firing their guns at the same time at you, can actually have a really massive impact on the overall outcome of your game. Now, granted, there are some issues with ranked, and we will touch on those, but for the most part, this is a universal truth. The importance of the first down cannot be overstated, and in many scenarios, you are better off sacrificing missing out on a kill or two to make sure that you're not the person who is giving somebody an entry frag and giving somebody the ability to push. That should give you guys a bit of an insight into what the top 1% of these lobbies look like. And generally speaking, I think it's also given an insight into the wider issues that exist with rank, because it certainly isn't perfect. First and foremost, not a fan of Battle Ready being an existing thing in the game. I'm also not a fan of the Bandolier one being a thing either, because we're basically giving people multiple grenades, 4 grenades with Bandolier, and we're giving people VSATs on any given occasion with Battle Ready. Generally speaking, I still fail to see what wild cards are offering to Call of Duty Warzone that don't just complicate the balancing or make the balancing overly unbalanced in places. The next big thing we're seeing is the exploitation of A attachment weapons landing on buy stations and picking them up for $500 is a bug that they have tried to fix on about 3 separate occasions and still haven't managed. Any bug that's in the game or things that are even mildly broken are things that are going to be dealt with and used extremely quickly in a top 1% ranked lobby, and nobody's going to miss out on them. The second it was clear that you could get an 8 attachment weapon for $500, the entire dynamic of these top 1% lobbies changed. Almost everybody is landing immediately on weapons and taking them, and it's completely shifted how the initial opening couple of minutes of the game should be played. The tempo at the start of these rounds now is exceedingly fast, when it really should be about 40% slower, whilst people slowly get their weapons and money together to pull together resources. Balancing generally is the last thing that's been pretty heavily exposed here. Having 100 round magazines on an XM4 which has 0 recoil basically means that you have 300 bullets of laser beams firing at you on any given occasion, and considering most of the structures in this game seem to be made of paper, it just creates this really awful balancing dynamic. And right now, I would actually say that the XM4 situation is probably worse than the RPK back in Warzone 2, and equally as bad as what we've saw with sniper rifles. People at the moment in ranked and even in these top 1% lobbies don't seem to want to move a huge amount right now because people know that instantly they're going to get beamed by 3-0 recoil XM4s. And when you have that kind of meta, people play a lot more passively, people don't move as much, and you get the same situation that we saw with one-shot sniper rifles that make the game flow extremely slowly and extremely ratty as well, in a way that people don't really tend to enjoy in a ranked scenario. The fact that you can also place 4 blast traps down is pretty insane, and 3 spring mines, and those things are definitely feeling quite overpowered in places. And the whole VSAT meta with Battle Ready is also becoming quite problematic, and it honestly feels as though UAVs are popped for about 90% of the entire lobby, and VSATs are probably popped for about 50% of the entire lobby. And these are all things that I feel need to be ironed out for ranked going forward. I hope you guys enjoyed this glimpse into what a top 1% lobby in ranked play looks like so far, and obviously as people continue to gain SR, you're going to see people in higher ranks and spread out a little bit more into Crimson, into T250, into Iridescent, that you would expect to see. But for now, everybody is pretty much fighting around the same brackets except for the serial grinders who don't sleep, and I'm telling you, it's creating some really interesting gameplay. I've honestly played some squads recently where I've just pretty much had to tip my hat at the level of which they're playing. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and I'll see you again in the next one.